My husband left me because my mother-in-law said I wasn't worthy of their family, but once they saw who I became, they came back begging for help. Looking back now, I can pinpoint the exact moment I should have walked away. It wasn't when his mother first made that comment about my accent being charming but not quite right for their circles. It wasn't even when she asked what my father did for a living with that particular tone that made it clear she already knew and disapproved. No, the moment I should have recognized everything for what it was came 3 months before our wedding, during what was supposed to be a simple family dinner. I'd been with him for 3 years at that point. 3 years of what I genuinely believed was love. We met at a community event, one of those awkward networking mixers where nobody really wants to be there. He was different from anyone I'd dated before, more polished, more confident. His family had money, the kind that doesn't announce itself with flashy cars or designer labels, but shows up in yacht club memberships and casual mentions of the house in the Hamptons. I came from a normal middle-class background. My dad was a high school teacher. My mom worked in healthcare administration. We were comfortable, but we weren't country club comfortable. The warning signs were there from the beginning. I just didn't want to see them. The first time I met his parents, his mother had looked me up and down in a way that made me feel like a specimen under a microscope. She'd asked where I went to college with this hopeful lilt in her voice, and when I named my state school, something flickered across her face. Disappointment, maybe, or confirmation of something she'd already suspected. His father had been kinder, asking about my major and my career plans with what seemed like genuine interest. But I caught him glancing at his wife, reading her reactions, adjusting his warmth accordingly. I remember leaving that first dinner feeling like I'd failed a test I didn't know I was taking. My boyfriend, he assured me it went well, that his parents liked me, but there was something hollow in his voice, something that should have told me he was trying to convince himself as much as me. His mother tolerated me at first. She was always civil, always smiling, but there was something calculating behind her eyes, like she was waiting for me to prove her suspicions correct, whatever those were. I tried so hard to win her over. I researched etiquette online, watching videos about which fork to use and how to hold a wine glass properly. I dressed carefully for family events, spending money I didn't really have on clothes that looked expensive without actually being expensive. I learned about their interests, reading up on classical music and golf and whatever charity organizations his mother was involved with that month. I thought if I just worked hard enough, showed her how much I loved her son, she'd eventually accept me. I volunteered to help with family events, always arrived with a hostess gift, remembered birthdays and anniversaries. I made myself smaller, quieter, more palatable. When his mother made subtle digs about my career, I laughed them off. When she corrected my pronunciation of foreign words, I thanked her for the education. When she suggested I might want to consider elevating my wardrobe, I nodded and took notes. Looking back, I can see how exhausting it all was, how much energy I spent trying to transform myself into someone worthy of their approval. My best friend noticed, kept asking why I was changing, why I seemed so anxious all the time. I told her it was just wedding stress, normal adjustment to joining a new family. But it wasn't normal. It was slowly eroding who I was, piece by piece, and I was too in love to notice. The dinner happened on a Saturday in June. They'd invited us to their house, one of those sprawling properties with a name instead of just an address. His mother had insisted on cooking, which should have been my first red flag because she never cooked. They had people for that. But she wanted it to be intimate, just the four of us. Her, his father, him, and me. Everything started pleasantly enough. His father asked about my job, and I was excited to share that I'd just been given more responsibilities at work. I was managing a small team at a mid-sized company, nothing glamorous, but I was proud of what I'd accomplished. His mother smiled through the conversation, but I noticed she kept steering topics back to their family friends, people with titles and surnames I was supposed to recognize. Then came the moment that changed everything. We were clearing the table, his mother and I, carrying dishes to the kitchen while the men stayed in the dining room talking about something business-related. The second we were alone, her entire demeanor shifted. The polite mask dropped, and what replaced it was cold, surgical precision. "We need to talk about your wedding," she said, not looking at me, just methodically scraping plates into the disposal. "Of course," I replied, thinking she wanted to discuss venue details or guest lists. "I've been meaning to ask your opinion on the... I don't think this marriage should happen." I actually laughed. I thought she was joking, maybe testing me in some weird way wealthy people test their future daughters-in-law. But when I saw her face, completely serious, the laugh died in my throat. I'm sorry. What? She turned to face me fully then, and I'll never forget the look in her eyes. Not angry, not even particularly emotional. Just matter of fact, like she was explaining basic mathematics to a slow student. You're a nice girl. Really, you are. But you're not what he needs. You don't come from the right families. Your father's a teacher. Your mother works in healthcare. That's fine, it's respectable, but it doesn't help him. He needs connections. Someone whose family name opens doors. The words landed hard, each one carefully chosen. She wasn't yelling or being dramatic, just stating facts as she saw them. I love him, I managed to say, my voice shaking. Doesn't that matter? Of course it matters. But love isn't enough when you're building a life at this level. He needs a partner who brings something to the table beyond feelings. Someone who understands how this world works because they grew up in it. I stood there holding a serving platter, my hands trembling. Part of me wanted to throw it at her. Part of me wanted to scream. But mostly, I just felt humiliated. Because even as angry as I was, some small part of me wondered if she had a point. All those moments I'd felt out of place at their events, all those times I'd said the wrong thing or worn the wrong outfit. Were they proof that I didn't belong? Does he know you're saying this? I finally managed, my throat tight. He knows I have concerns. And I think deep down, he shares them. He's just too kind to say so. He's been raised to be a gentleman, but kindness isn't always wisdom. I set the platter down carefully. Afraid my shaking hands would drop it. I think I should go. I think that would be best. Tell him you're not feeling well. We can pretend this conversation never happened, and you can end things gracefully over the next few weeks. He'll be hurt initially, but he'll recover, and you'll find someone more suitable for your situation. I walked back into the dining room. My fiancé looked up, smiling, completely oblivious to the fact that his mother had just eviscerated our relationship in the kitchen. I told him I wasn't feeling well, which was technically true. He offered to drive me home, but I insisted on calling a car. I needed to be alone. That night, I didn't tell him what his mother said. I kept waiting for the right moment, for the courage, for something. Instead, I started noticing things I'd been too in love to see before. The way he'd mentioned, casually, that his business partner's wife went to the same prep school as his sister. The way he'd sometimes wince when I'd use a phrase that was too casual for formal dinners. The way he'd gently correct my pronunciation of certain words, always with a laugh, always framed as helpful. The second dinner happened 2 weeks later. His mother called and invited me specifically, claiming she wanted to apologize for being stressed at the last dinner. I knew it was a trap, but I went anyway because I was still in that phase where I thought I could fix everything, where I believed love conquered all obstacles, including snobbery and classism. This time she waited until her son left to pick up wine from their cellar. It took him exactly 12 minutes to go down, select a bottle, and return. In those 12 minutes, she systematically destroyed every illusion I had about my future with this family. I've had time to think, she started, keeping her voice low. And I need to be direct. My son needs someone who can help him professionally. Someone from the right families. You understand what I'm saying, don't you? Not really, no. His father and I have spent generations building connections. He needs a wife who already has those relationships. Someone people know. You'd be starting from zero. That's not fair to him. Not fair to him? What about what's fair to me? She waved that off like it was irrelevant. You seem like a nice person, but nice isn't enough. He needs strategic advantage. Can you give him that? When he came back with the wine, I gave him an ultimatum right there at the table. Me or his mother's approval. Choose. His father looked uncomfortable, actually started to say something like, now let's all just... But his mother cut him off with a look. My ex looked confused and cornered. That's not fair, my ex said. You're making me pick sides when there don't need to be sides. Your mother just told me I'm not good enough for your family. That I'll hold you back. So yes, there are sides. Which one are you on? His father tried again. I think we should all take a breath and... But my ex was already looking at his mother, then at me, then back at his mother. And in that moment of hesitation, in those few seconds of silence while his father's attempted intervention died in the air, I had my answer. Maybe, he started slowly, painfully. Maybe Mom has a point about us being from different worlds. Not that you're not good enough, he added quickly, seeing my face. Just that we want different things. Need different things. I took off the ring right there. Set it on the table next to the expensive wine I'd never drink. His mother didn't even try to hide her relief. His father looked away. And my fiancé just sat there, not stopping me, not fighting for us, not doing anything except proving his mother right about one thing. He wasn't strong enough to stand up for what he wanted. I walked out of that house and didn't look back. The next few weeks were a blur of canceled vendors, awkward explanations to confused friends who'd already bought dresses and booked hotels, and sleeping on my best friend's couch. She was furious on my behalf, wanted me to tell everyone what his mother had said, posted on social media, make sure everyone knew exactly what kind of people they were. But I couldn't. I was too humiliated, too defeated, too busy wondering if maybe they were right about me all along. I just wanted to disappear. I spent my days at work pretending everything was fine, deflecting questions about wedding plans with vague answers about postponing and reconsidering. At night, I'd lie on that lumpy couch and replay every moment of the relationship, looking for signs I'd missed, ways I'd failed, proof that I'd never been good enough in the first place. The worst part was the silence from him. No calls, no texts, no attempts to fix things or even explain. Just nothing. Like our 3 years together could be erased with a conversation and a returned ring. I kept expecting him to show up, to tell me he'd made a mistake, to fight for us. But he never did. And that absence said more than any conversation could have. My best friend, bless her soul, wouldn't let me wallow forever. After 2 weeks of watching me mope around in pajamas, barely eating, jumping every time my phone buzzed with hope that it might be him, she physically dragged me out of her apartment. "You're not staying on my couch forever," she declared, practically pushing me into her car. "And you're not going to let those pretentious assholes take up any more space in your head. We're finding you an apartment today." "I can't afford anything decent," I protested weakly. "Not after losing the deposits on the wedding venue, and so you'll live somewhere small. So what? At least it'll be yours. Your space, your rules, no judgment from anyone about whether you're fancy enough to exist there." We spent that Saturday looking at apartments in my budget, which meant tiny and old, but livable. My best friend had opinions about all of them, pointing out weird smells and suspicious stains and questionable neighborhoods. But when we walked into a small one-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a building with peeling paint but good bones, something clicked. "This one," I said, standing in the empty living room with sunlight streaming through the windows. "Really? The kitchen's tiny and there's no dishwasher and—" "This one," I repeated. "It's mine. Nobody else's. Just mine." We found a small one-bedroom in an okay neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. The security deposit took most of my savings, along with the money I'd lost on wedding deposits I couldn't recover, and I had to buy furniture secondhand from online marketplaces and thrift stores. My best friend helped me move in with her boyfriend's truck, and we spent a whole weekend assembling mismatched furniture and hanging curtains I'd found on clearance. Standing in that empty apartment on move-in day, I cried. Not sad tears exactly, more like release tears. This space wasn't impressive or elegant or likely to appear in any home magazine. But it was mine, truly mine, and nobody here cared whether I was ordinary or not. Slowly, piece by piece, I built something that felt like home. Work became my refuge in those early months. I threw myself into projects with a dedication bordering on obsessive, volunteering for extra assignments, staying late, coming in early. If I was working, I wasn't thinking about him or his family or the future I'd lost. If I was busy, I wasn't wondering what was wrong with me. My manager noticed. She pulled me aside one day, concern written across her face, and asked if everything was okay, if I was dealing with something. I gave her the abbreviated, sanitized version, broken engagement, starting over, using work to stay focused. She nodded like she understood more than I was saying, like maybe she'd been there herself once. "I appreciate your dedication," she said carefully. "But don't burn yourself out trying to outrun whatever you're feeling. Sometimes you have to let yourself feel it." She was right, of course. But feeling it hurt too much, so I kept running. 3 months after the breakup, my best friend decided I'd been a hermit long enough and dragged me to a party. I didn't want to go. The thought of making small talk and pretending to be okay exhausted me before we even left her car. But she wouldn't take no for an answer. "You've been a recluse long enough," she insisted, already pulling into the parking lot. "You're coming. You're wearing something that isn't work clothes, and you're going to talk to at least 3 new people who aren't me. Those are the non-negotiable rules." The party was at someone's apartment. Too many people crammed into too small a space. Music too loud for real conversation. I immediately regretted coming, and was calculating how long I had to stay before I could politely escape when I saw him near the kitchen, looking as uncomfortable as I felt. He was tall, had kind eyes, and was very clearly trying to figure out his own exit strategy. We made eye contact accidentally, and something about his expression of mutual misery made me smile. "You don't want to be here either," I said. Not really a question. "Is it that obvious?" he replied, laughing. I thought I was hiding it better. "You're doing terribly." I could spot a fellow escapee from across the room. In my defense, I was specifically told I couldn't leave before 10 o'clock, and I've been watching the clock like it holds the secrets of the universe. We ended up talking for the rest of the party, first in that kitchen corner, then on the apartment balcony where it was quieter. He worked in environmental consulting, something about sustainability assessments for corporations, and he talked about it with genuine passion that was refreshing. No pretense, no name-dropping, just someone who clearly cared about what he did. He asked about my work because he was actually interested, not because he was evaluating whether it was impressive enough. He laughed at my jokes without analyzing whether they were appropriate for mixed company. He didn't comment on my clothes or my pronunciation or ask about my family background. He just talked to me like I was a person worth talking to, and it was the most comfortable I'd felt with someone new in years. When the party ended, we exchanged numbers. "For coffee," he said. "If you want. No pressure, just you seem cool, and I'd like to talk to you more when there isn't terrible music and overcrowding involved." Our first date was coffee on a Sunday morning at a local cafe, where the barista knew his order and the chairs were mismatched but comfortable. We sat there for 4 hours, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about growing up in the suburbs with parents who were still happily married after 30 years, about his sister who taught elementary school, about his college years studying environmental science. His life sounded wonderfully, beautifully normal. I told him some of my story, the edited version at first. Broken engagement, starting over, figuring things out. He didn't pry for details I wasn't ready to share, didn't analyze every word I said for hidden meaning. He just listened and occasionally said things like, "That sounds really hard," or "You seem to be handling it well," without trying to fix me or offer unsolicited advice. For the first time since the breakup, I went an entire afternoon without thinking about my ex. It felt like freedom, like breathing after being underwater too long. We took things slowly after that. After everything with my ex, I was cautious, scared to trust my own judgment again. What if I was wrong about this person too? What if I was missing red flags again? But the more time I spent with him, the more I realized this felt different. Felt real in a way that didn't require constant translation or interpretation. He was exactly who he presented himself to be. No hidden agendas, no family politics to navigate, no tests to pass. When he said he'd call, he called. When he made plans, he kept them. When I had a bad day, he listened without trying to solve it or minimize it. Simple things, basic things, but they felt revolutionary after years of second-guessing everything. Around month 4, right when things were getting serious, my promotion came through. I'd been at the company for 5 years, and my dedication, all those late nights and extra projects, had finally paid off in ways I never expected. They created a new senior position and offered it to me. The salary increase was significant enough that I actually gasped when I saw the offer letter. Not wealthy by any means, but enough that I could finally breathe, could actually save money instead of living paycheck to paycheck, could stop buying everything secondhand and treat myself occasionally without guilt. My manager pulled me into her office to give me the news personally. "You've earned this," she said simply. "Your work speaks for itself, and the leadership team agrees you're ready for this next level. Congratulations." I called my best friend first, ugly crying in the parking lot from relief and joy, and the sheer overwhelming validation of it all. Then I called my new boyfriend, who answered on the first ring like he'd been waiting. "So," I said, trying to steady my voice, "remember how I said I was hoping for a promotion? You got it." He said it as fact, not a question, like he'd never doubted it for a second. I got it. His whoop of joy through the phone made me laugh and cry harder. We're celebrating, tonight, wherever you want. He took me to dinner at a good restaurant. Not anywhere fancy or trying too hard, just a solid place where the food was excellent and we could hear each other talk. He was more excited than I was, genuinely proud of me in a way that felt uncomplicated and pure. No calculations about what it meant for his status or career, no evaluation of whether my success enhanced or threatened him. Just pure happiness that I'd achieved something I'd worked hard for. You know what this means? He said, grinning over dessert. You can finally get a couch that isn't held together by hope and duct tape. I laughed for the first time in what felt like forever. Really laughed. The kind that makes your stomach hurt. And then the tears came, because I realized how much I'd been holding in, how long I'd been just surviving instead of living. He reached across the table and took my hand, not saying anything, just being there. And that was enough. That was everything. He came over that weekend and helped me assemble new furniture. Cheap stuff from a big box store, but it was new, and it was mine, and I'd chosen it without anyone's approval. We put together shelves and a bookcase, and he made terrible jokes about the wordless instruction diagrams, and my apartment slowly stopped feeling like a temporary landing spot and started feeling like home. 6 months after the breakup, I was actually happy. Not pretending, not performing, but genuinely content with my life. The thought of my ex and his family still stung, but it was becoming background noise instead of the main soundtrack. I was building something real, something that belonged to me. Then the universe decided I'd had enough peace. I was shopping for work clothes at a department store downtown. My promotion meant more client meetings, and I needed to look the part, when I literally bumped into someone while looking at blazers. When I looked up to apologize, I recognized her vaguely. She'd been at a few of my ex's family events. One of those peripheral connections who always seemed to know everyone's business. "Oh my goodness," she exclaimed, clearly delighted to have stumbled into drama. "I haven't seen you in forever. How are you doing?" I could have walked away. Should have. But something about her expression told me she had information. And despite knowing better, I wanted to know. "I'm doing well," I said cautiously. She leaned in conspiratorially, like we were close friends instead of near strangers. "I'm glad to hear that, because I heard things have been difficult for him lately. Lost his job, I think? Financial troubles? I don't know all the details." "But," she trailed off meaningfully. It was gossip, probably half true at best, but it planted a seed of unease that I couldn't shake. I shouldn't have cared. I'd moved on. I was happy. His problems weren't my problems anymore. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't affect me. There was a tiny, petty part of me that felt vindicated, and a larger part that just felt sad about the whole situation. A week later, I was at dinner with my boyfriend at a nice restaurant. Nothing too fancy, but definitely nicer than our usual spots. We were celebrating his birthday, and I'd made a reservation at this place he'd been wanting to try. We were halfway through our meal, laughing about something, when I felt the energy in the room shift. His mother was standing at the entrance, being seated by the hostess. She spotted me almost immediately. Her eyes widened for a fraction of a second, then she composed herself and, to my absolute horror, started walking toward our table. "What a lovely surprise," she said, her voice dripping with that same false warmth I remembered. "You look wonderful. Life must be treating you well." My boyfriend looked at me, clearly confused about who this woman was and why I'd gone rigid in my seat. I managed to introduce them without much detail. "This is my ex's mother." "Oh, don't hold the past against me," she said, laughing lightly. "I always liked you, dear. Just because things didn't work out with my son doesn't mean we can't be civil. How's your career going? I heard you got a promotion." "That's wonderful. Really wonderful." The fact that she knew about my promotion sent chills down my spine. How did she know? Who was feeding her information about my life? "I should let you two enjoy your dinner," she continued, and I could see her eyes taking in everything about my boyfriend, calculating, assessing. "It was so good to see you looking so happy. You've really landed on your feet." She walked away to her own table, but the damage was done. My appetite vanished, the celebration feeling tainted. My boyfriend reached across the table and took my hand. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "She told me I wasn't good enough for her family," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "She said I was too ordinary, that I didn't have the right connections, and now she acts like we're old friends running into each other. I don't understand what game she's playing. She's not playing a game with you, he said, and there was something surprisingly insightful in his voice. She's playing one with herself, rewriting history so she doesn't have to feel bad about whatever role she played. Just ignore her. But ignoring her was easier said than done. A few days later, I got a message from my ex's brother. We'd always gotten along during my relationship with his brother. He was younger, less caught up in the family drama. His message was apologetic and concerning in equal measure. I'm sorry about my mom approaching you at that restaurant. She had no right. I think you should know that things are worse than they appear with my brother. I can't get into all the details, but please be careful if she tries to contact you again. She's desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. You were right to walk away when you did. I stared at that message for a long time, not sure how to respond. Finally, I just thanked him and said I hoped his brother got whatever help he needed. I didn't ask for details. I didn't want to know. Whatever was happening with my ex was not my responsibility, not my problem, not my concern. But the universe apparently disagreed. Over the next week, I felt like I was being watched. Nothing concrete, just that prickly sensation of eyes on you. I'd catch myself looking over my shoulder in parking lots, scanning crowds in coffee shops. My boyfriend noticed I was jumpy, and I tried to play it off as work stress, but I don't think he bought it. Then came the voicemail. I didn't recognize the number, so I let it go to voicemail. When I listened to it later, I almost dropped my phone. It was his mother, but not the composed, calculating woman I remembered. This voice was raw, desperate, almost unhinged. Please, please call me back. We need to talk about my son. He needs help. Real help. And I think you might be the only one who can get through to him. I know I said some terrible things before, unforgivable things, but I was wrong. You were good for him. You made him better, and without you, he's falling apart. Please, just give me a chance to explain. Please. The message went on for almost 2 minutes, her voice breaking multiple times, begging. I deleted it immediately, my hands shaking. But within an hour, another call came, then another. Then text from a different number, clearly her, saying she just wanted 5 minutes of my time. I blocked the numbers, but more kept coming. She was relentless, using different phones, finding ways around my blocks. Finally, in frustration and against every instinct telling me not to, I sent a single text response. Stop calling. If you need to talk, we can meet for coffee once. Then no more contact, ever. Her response came in seconds. Agreement, gratitude. A time and place suggestion so fast it made me nauseous. She'd been waiting for me to crack. I met her at a coffee shop far from my apartment, during lunch hour when there would be plenty of people around. Safety and crowds and all that. She was already there when I arrived, and I barely recognized her. The perfectly coiffed hair was limp, the designer outfit replaced with something rumpled and ordinary. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in the 6 months since I'd last seen her up close. Thank you for coming, she said, gripping her coffee cup like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. I know I have no right to ask anything of you after what I said, after how I treated you. You don't, I agreed flatly. So let's skip the apologies and get to why we're here. She flinched but nodded. Then she started talking, and it was like watching a dam break. Her son had been struggling for over a year, she admitted. Even before we broke up, he'd been making questionable decisions at work, distracted and unfocused. After I left, it got worse. He was fired within 3 months for missing deadlines and showing up drunk. He'd taken out personal loans, against their advice, to invest in a business venture with someone who turned out to be less legitimate than advertised. When that collapsed 8 months ago, the debt started piling up. He's been living at home for 6 months now, she said quietly. And he's drinking heavily, every night. We've tried to help, but he won't listen. Just keeps saying he destroyed his own life. I sat there processing this timeline. 1.5 years of steady decline. Not the rapid collapse I'd imagined. It made more sense, though it didn't change anything. I think you're the only person he ever really listened to. I think if you talked to him, showed him you don't hate him, maybe he could find a way forward. Let me be very clear, I said slowly, deliberately. I am not responsible for his choices or his mental health. I am not a magical cure for his problems. And I am definitely not getting back together with him to make you feel better about how things turned out. I'm not asking for that, she said quickly, though I could see in her eyes that somewhere, deep down, That was exactly what she was hoping for. I'm just asking you to talk to him, as a friend, as someone who cares. I don't care, I said, and I meant it. Not anymore. I can't afford to. I've built a life without him, a good life, and I'm not going to let his crisis pull me back into that world. I'm sorry he's struggling. I genuinely am. But I cannot be part of his recovery. That's not fair to him, to me, or to the life I've built. I stood up to leave, and she grabbed my wrist, desperate. Please. I know I was wrong about you. I know I said horrible things. My son made a terrible mistake listening to me. Doesn't that mean anything? It means you'll say whatever you need to say to get what you want, I replied, pulling my arm free. Just like before. Get your son professional help, a therapist, someone trained for this, not his ex. I walked out of that coffee shop and immediately called my boyfriend. I needed to hear his voice, needed to remember what healthy looked like. He picked up on the first ring, and just the sound of his hello made me feel steadier. That night, I got a long message from my ex himself. Not orchestrated by his mother this time, I could tell by the writing style and the raw honesty of it. He apologized for everything. For listening to his mother, for not fighting for us, for letting me walk away, for being too weak to stand up for what we had. He said watching me move on while he fell apart had been the wake-up call he needed to see how wrong he'd been about everything. I chose status over love, prestige over happiness, my mother's approval over my own heart. And I've paid for it every single day since. I'm not asking you to take me back. I don't deserve that. I'm just asking you to know that you were right about everything. And I was the fool who couldn't see it until it was too late. I hope your new boyfriend knows how lucky he is. I hope someone is finally treating you the way you deserved to be treated all along. It was one of the most honest, vulnerable things he'd ever written to me, and it changed nothing. I wrote back a simple response. I forgive you for how things ended. I appreciate the apology, but we both need to move forward separately. I hope you get the help you need, but I can't be part of that process. Please don't contact me again. I wish you well. Truly. His brother sent me one more message a few days later. Their mother was pushing hard for his brother to win me back, seeing me as some kind of magic solution to all their problems. He wanted me to know that his brother's issues went deeper than just depression and alcohol. There were other substances involved, other problems they'd been hiding. He wanted me to be prepared in case things escalated, and he was sorry I was being dragged back into their family mess. I thanked him for the warning and told him the same thing I'd told everyone else. I'd moved on, and they needed to respect that. Then I blocked his number too. It felt harsh, but necessary. Every connection to that family was a potential entry point for more drama, and I needed to seal all the doors. The next few weeks were harder than I expected. Not because I wanted my ex back or regretted my decision, but because the whole situation had infected my peace. At work, colleagues started asking subtle questions about my personal life after someone mentioned seeing some kind of scene in the parking lot. I had no idea what they were talking about until someone described a woman matching his mother's description hanging around my car one afternoon. My best friend noticed I was jumpy again, flinching at every text notification, checking over my shoulder constantly. The confidence I'd rebuilt was cracking under the pressure of being watched, contacted, pursued. My boyfriend finally sat me down one night after I practically jumped out of my skin when his phone buzzed. "Talk to me," he said gently. And I mean really talk to me, not the edited version you think I need to hear. So I told him everything. The messages, the desperate contact attempts, the feeling of being hunted. I told him I felt guilty for being happy while my ex was suffering, frustrated that my peace was being invaded, and angry that I cared at all. I told him I was scared that somehow I'd get pulled back into that world, that his mother's manipulation would find some crack in my armor. I keep thinking about what she said, I admitted, about me being ordinary. And part of me wonders if she was right, if I don't belong in those elevated circles, and if that makes me less somehow. He was quiet for a moment, then said something that changed my perspective entirely. The people who belong in those circles are the ones who think other people are ordinary. You escaped that mindset. That doesn't make you ordinary. That makes you smart. We spent the rest of that night making practical plans. I blocked every possible contact method I could think of, changed my routes to and from work, started avoiding places I used to frequent with my ex. We talked about me moving in with him earlier than planned if things escalated. What felt like common sense Safety measures also felt like admitting defeat, like letting them win by making me change my life to avoid them. But my boyfriend reframed it. It's not about them winning. It's about you protecting your peace. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. I wanted to believe him. Some days I did. Other days I just felt exhausted by the whole thing. Why couldn't they just leave me alone? Why was my existence as a happy, successful, moved-on person such a threat to them? Why couldn't they accept that sometimes relationships end and people go their separate ways and that's okay? The answer came in the form of his mother appearing in my office parking lot on a Tuesday afternoon. I was walking to my car after a particularly long day, thinking about what to make for dinner when I saw her. She was standing next to my vehicle, holding what looked like a folder or envelope, her expression desperate and determined. "Please don't run away," she called out as soon as she saw me. "Just hear me out. 5 minutes." I froze, acutely aware that several of my colleagues were in the parking lot, getting into their own cars, witnessing this scene. This was my professional space, my refuge, and she'd invaded it. "You need to leave," I said as firmly as I could manage. "Now." "I have his resume," she said, holding up the folder. "You're doing so well at your company, you have influence now. If you could just put in a word, help him get an interview, give him a chance to start rebuilding." "Absolutely not. Leave. Now. Please. You don't understand how bad it is. His father's heart can't take the stress. We might lose everything. You're doing well now. You could help him get back on his feet. Just an interview, that's all I'm asking." The nerve of it. This woman who'd told me I wasn't good enough, now asking me to use my success to help her son. "I'm calling security," I said, pulling out my phone. She stepped back, actually shocked. "I'm just asking for basic compassion." "You want compassion now? After what you said to me?" "No. You don't get to decide when I matter based on what I can do for you." I got in my car and drove away, hands shaking so badly I had to pull over after a few blocks to collect myself. I called my company's security office and reported the incident. I called my boyfriend and told him what happened. Then I cried because I was so angry and so tired of all of this. That night, a handwritten letter appeared under my apartment door. The violation hit harder than anything else had. She'd found where I lived. Later, I pieced together that she probably followed me from work that day after I drove away. Or maybe she'd been doing it for weeks, learning my routines. It's not hard to tail someone if you're determined enough, and she was clearly desperate. The thought of her car behind mine, watching me pull into my parking spot, following me to my building, made my skin crawl. The letter was several pages long, alternating between emotional manipulation and subtle accusations. She was trying to save her family, and I could help but wouldn't. Didn't I feel any responsibility for my role in her son's downfall? Didn't I care that my rejection had triggered his spiral? Couldn't I see that my success was somehow connected to his failure, as if the universe had taken from him to give to me? It was delusional, manipulative, and exhausting. I took photos of it as documentation and then threw it away. Within days, new social media accounts appeared, messaging me through platforms I'd forgotten I even had. Emails from addresses I didn't recognize, all with the same desperate pleas and guilt trips. My ex's brother reached out one final time, apologizing for his mother's behavior and offering to intervene. He said he could talk to her more forcefully, involve his father, do whatever I needed to make her stop. I appreciated the offer but declined. Getting more involved with that family, even with good intentions from him, would only prolong the nightmare. Instead, I documented everything. I spoke with a lawyer friend who helped me understand my options. I alerted my workplace security about the situation. I changed passwords, locked down social media, and made sure my boyfriend knew the full extent of what was happening. These weren't fun steps to take, but they were necessary. My boyfriend moved in temporarily. Just until things calmed down, we told ourselves. Having him there helped immensely. I wasn't jumping at every sound or checking the locks obsessively. I'd spoken with a lawyer friend about getting a restraining order. She walked me through the process, explained what I'd need. But here's the thing they don't tell you. Getting a restraining order means going to court, facing them, reliving everything in front of a judge, creating a permanent public record. And at that point, it had only been letters and phone calls. Annoying, invasive, but not technically threatening enough to guarantee approval. My lawyer friend said I had a case, but it wasn't slam dunk, and the process would take weeks during which they'd know I was pursuing legal action, which could escalate things. So I did what I could without court involvement. Documented everything, alerted building security with photos of his mother and ex, changed all my passwords, and had my boyfriend stay over. I told myself if they showed up in person again, that would be the line. That would be when I'd file. I should have filed anyway. That's the thing about boundaries. You set them and then you second-guess yourself, wonder if you're overreacting, hope it'll just stop on its own. 3 weeks passed with no contact. I started to breathe easier. I went to the beach with my best friend for a long weekend. The first real break I'd taken in over a year. We laughed about old times, made new memories, and I felt like myself again. The version of myself that wasn't defined by my ex or his family, or any of that drama. Just me, living my life, happy. One evening, my boyfriend took me to meet his parents for dinner. I'd met them briefly before, but this felt more official somehow. I was nervous. Old anxieties about not being good enough creeping back in. But his mother asked about my work with genuine interest. No agenda behind the questions. His father told terrible dad jokes and everyone groaned and laughed. They treated me like a person, not a prospect. Like someone their son cared about, not a strategic acquisition. Sitting at that dinner table, watching this normal, functional family interact with basic kindness and respect, I realized how toxic my previous relationship had really been. Not just the end, but the whole thing. The constant evaluation. The feeling that I was always on probation. The exhausting performance of being good enough. I'd thought that was normal, that all families operated that way. But they didn't. Some families just accepted people. When we left that night, I cried in the car. I cried. Happy tears this time. My boyfriend held my hand and didn't ask questions. Just let me feel whatever I needed to feel. For the first time in almost a year, the future felt more real than the past. I could see it, could imagine it, could believe in it. And it looked nothing like the life I'd thought I wanted before. The peace lasted exactly 11 more days. We were having dinner at my apartment, nothing fancy, just pasta and wine and easy conversation about our days, when someone started pounding on the door. Not knocking politely, pounding. Aggressive, desperate, drunk pounding that rattled the frame. I knew who it was before I even stood up. Some part of me had been expecting this moment, waiting for the other shoe to drop, knowing that desperate people eventually escalate. My boyfriend moved to stand beside me as I approached the door, his hand on my lower back, steadying me. Through the peephole, I saw my ex swaying slightly in the hallway, clearly intoxicated, his clothes disheveled. His mother stood behind him, one hand on his shoulder trying to steady him or maybe control him, her expression a mix of determination and desperation. The sight would have been pathetic if it wasn't so violating, so terrifying in its implications. "Open the door," my ex slurred loudly enough for the whole floor to hear, his words running together. "We need to talk. You can't just ignore me forever. You can't just pretend I don't exist. You owe me a conversation at least. 3 years. You owe me something for 3 years." "I don't owe you anything," I called back through the door, my voice steadier than I felt. Adrenaline sharpening my words. "You need to leave. Now. 5 minutes. Just give me 5 goddamn minutes to explain everything. To show you I've changed. To tell you what I should have said when I had the chance. Please." His voice cracked on the last word, genuine pain breaking through the alcohol. His mother's voice cut in, sharper, more controlled, the manipulation instinct kicking in even now. "We just want to talk like reasonable adults. Surely you can give us that much after everything we meant to each other, after being practically part of our family for 3 years. My boyfriend pulled out his phone, his jaw tight. "I'm calling the police," he said loudly enough for them to hear, his finger already hovering over the screen. There was a beat of silence, then more pounding, harder this time. "You're really going to do that to me? After everything we were to each other? You're going to call the cops like I'm some dangerous stranger? Like I'm nothing to you?" "You are a stranger now," I said, my voice gaining strength from my boyfriend's presence beside me, from the rightness of this boundary. "And you're trespassing. And you're drunk. Leave now or the police will make you leave." More pounding, then his mother's voice again, trying a different tactic, the weaponized compassion that had probably worked on him his whole life. "He's not well. Can't you see that? Can't you hear it in his voice? He needs help. He needs someone who understands him. You knew him better than anyone. Can't you have a little compassion, a little humanity? He needs professional help, I responded, pressing my hand against the door like I could push them away through it. Not me. There are therapists, counselors, programs designed for exactly this. But I cannot be part of his recovery. It's not healthy for him or for me. Please go. Then something unexpected happened. My ex's voice changed, became clearer somehow, more sober, like the desperation had burned through some of the alcohol haze. You were right, he said quietly, and I could hear him closer to the door now, maybe leaning against it. About everything. About my mother, about us, about all of it. I should have defended you. I should have chosen you. I should have told her to go to hell and married you anyway. And I didn't, and I've regretted it every single day since. Every single day. The apology might have been sincere, but the context made it manipulation. Standing outside my door, drunk, with his mother as backup, demanding access to my home and my life and my emotional energy, that wasn't genuine remorse. That was desperation wearing an apology as a costume, trying to find any angle that might work. Then his mother must have seen my boyfriend through the peephole, or maybe saw our shadows under the door, because her tone shifted again, sharpening into accusation. There's someone else? Already? How long has this been going on? The accusation was absurd. I met him months after we broke up. Not that I owe you explanations. My ex tried to look through the peephole, pressing close to the door. When he realized what his mother had said, when it sank in that I'd actually moved on, something broke. I could hear it in the silence that followed. Then he turned on his mother. His voice was different, louder, angrier than I'd ever heard it. This is your fault. You know that, right? She left because of you. Because you couldn't just let me be happy. Had to make everything about the family name and connections and all that bullshit. His mother sounded stunned. I was protecting you. You were controlling me, and I let you. I actually let you ruin my life because I was too weak to tell you no. There was a thud, like he'd hit or leaned heavily against the wall. Look at us. We're standing outside her door begging, while she's in there with some guy who probably just loves her without needing his mother's permission for everything. It was raw and messy, and real in a way I'd never heard from him before. And it changed nothing. I'm sorry, he said finally, his voice barely audible now, speaking to the door, to me, to no one. You were right, about all of it. I hope you're happy. Then I heard footsteps walking away, unsteady and slow. Just his. His mother stood there for what felt like forever, and I could practically feel her trying to decide whether to keep pushing. Finally, I heard her heels clicking away down the hallway too. My boyfriend and I stood there in silence for a long moment. Then he pulled me into a hug, and I finally let myself fully exhale. It's over, he said quietly. It's over, I agreed. The next few days were quiet. No messages, no calls, no surprise appearances. Then my ex's brother sent one final text. Over our brief exchanges, I'd learned he was the youngest, had always been the disappointing child because he'd chosen teaching over business, and had watched his brother suffer under their mother's expectations for years. Mom finally backed off after Dad threatened to leave her if she didn't stop. He told her she'd already lost one son to her obsessions, and he wasn't going to let her destroy what was left of the family. First time I've ever seen him stand up to her like that. I'm taking my brother to his first real therapy appointment tomorrow, and to a support group meeting this week. I wanted you to know because you deserve to know this isn't on you. Our family's problems existed long before you, and you walking away probably saved yourself from years of this. Thank you for being kind even when we didn't deserve it. I hope you're happy. It was more closure than I expected. I thanked him and wished him luck with his brother, and that was it. No more contact needed or wanted. Work became engaging again instead of just a distraction. My team successfully launched the project we'd been working on, and the recognition was genuine and earned. My best friend threw me a small celebration, just a few close people, and it felt like marking the end of an era and the beginning of something better. My boyfriend and I signed a lease on a bigger apartment, one that would be ours from the start. No baggage, no history, just a fresh space for a fresh start. We spent weekends furniture shopping and painting walls and arguing cheerfully about whether the couch should go under the window or against the opposite wall. One Saturday, while we were assembling yet another piece of furniture with terrible instructions, he looked up at me and said, "I'm proud of you for how you handled all of that, for not letting them break you." I let them break me a little, I admitted. At the beginning, I definitely let them break me. And then you put yourself back together. That's the part that counts. Maybe he was right. Maybe the breaking wasn't the failure the staying broken would have been. I'd gotten up, built a new life, protected my peace, and refused to let someone else's crisis become my own. That had to count for something. Sometimes I still think about my ex and wonder how he's doing. If he's stuck with therapy, if he's managing better, if he found some peace. But those thoughts are distant now, like wondering about an acquaintance from long ago rather than someone who used to be my whole world. I don't think much about what his mother said anymore either. The labels she tried to put on me don't stick like they used to. I have a job I worked hard for, a relationship built on actual respect, friends who show up when it matters. That's enough. My boyfriend proposed 3 months after everything settled. Nothing fancy, just dinner at home and a ring he'd saved up for, and a simple question asked while we were washing dishes together. No elaborate plan, no audience, no pressure. Just him looking at me across the sink with soapy hands and saying, "I want to do this forever. With you. Will you marry me?" I said yes without hesitation, without needing to weigh anything or wonder what anyone else would think. Just yes, because I wanted to. We're planning a small wedding now. Maybe 40 people at a garden venue. His mother is helping, which is still surreal to me. She's genuinely excited, brings ideas without hidden agendas, actually listens when I say I don't want something. When I showed her my dress choice, she got teary and said I looked beautiful. Just that. No critique, no suggestions for improvement, just happiness. My parents are thrilled. My mom said last week, "I like this one. He looks at you like you're exactly enough." That observation made me tear up because it was so simple and so true. Sometimes I think about how different my life could have been, how I almost married into that family, almost spent years trying to meet standards that kept shifting, almost lost who I was. And I'm grateful his mother showed me who she was before I was legally tied to that family. She freed me, even if that wasn't her goal. The wedding planning isn't all smooth. We've had disagreements about the budget. My best friend has opinions about everything, and coordinating family schedules has been annoying. But it's normal annoying, not toxic annoying. There's a difference. I saw him once more, about a year after that confrontation at my door. I was at a coffee shop with my best friend, mid-conversation about her new job, when he walked in. He looked different, healthier, like he'd gained back weight he'd lost. His clothes were neat, not expensive, but clean and put together. He was alone, ordering coffee with the casual ease of someone running a normal errand, not the desperate mess who'd shown up drunk at my apartment. Our eyes met for just a second. There was a flash of recognition, then something else. Acknowledgement, maybe. Understanding. Possibly even mutual relief that we'd both survived what happened. He gave a small nod. I returned it. He collected his coffee and left without trying to approach or speak to me. No drama, no big moment. Just two people who used to know each other, crossing paths in a city, moving on with their separate lives. My best friend had seen the whole exchange. "You good?" "Yeah," I said, and I meant it. "I'm really good." He looked better. He did, I agreed. And I was glad for that. Genuinely. Not because I wanted him back or felt responsible for his recovery, just because seeing someone you once cared about doing better is a relief. Proof that maybe all that pain wasn't for nothing. "You think he's actually okay?" she asked. "I don't know. I hope so, but it's not my job to know anymore." She squeezed my hand across the table. "Look at you being all healthy and boundaried." I laughed. "Only took me a year and a half and a lot of therapy. Worth it, though." "Yeah," I said, looking down at the engagement ring on my finger. "Yeah, it really was." And I was. I am. I built a life that's mine, filled with people who care about me for who I actually am. My career is going well because I'm good at what I do. My relationship works because we're actually compatible, not because we're strategically aligned or meeting someone else's expectations. It's not perfect. We argue about money sometimes. I still have moments where I doubt myself. The wedding planning has its stressful moments. But it's real stress over real things, not the constant underlying anxiety of never being quite enough. His mother was wrong about a lot of things, but she was right about one. We were from different worlds. I just didn't realize that was actually a good thing. Her world looked shiny from the outside but was exhausting to live in. My world might be simpler, but it's genuine. And that turns out to be exactly what I needed all along.